A lawyer is a convict's best hope for salvation, but for these convicts, the lawyer was their target. First up is Taylor Schabusiness. In Wisconsin, Taylor Schabusiness was over at her boyfriend Shad Darian's house when something went wrong and she immediately left, slamming the door behind her. This was loud enough for Darian's mother to wake up, but then she had a waking nightmare. Darian's mother found her son strangled, dismembered, and beaten. Looking down, she saw a horrifying bucket with Shad's separated head in it. Darian's mum mustered up the strength to call the police, who found Taylor shortly after, with no doubt that she murdered her boyfriend. Taylor even had blood and cuts all over her body. Despite literally being caught red-handed, Taylor Schabusiness still pleaded innocent in court, citing meth and trazodone abuse as the reason for what had happened.
It does appear to mirror what is in the complaint. We enter not guilty pleas on all counts.
Okay, not guilty pleas will be entered on behalf of the defendant.
It seemed like the drugs still had some effect on her as she suddenly attacked her own lawyer in court out of nowhere. Taylor was eventually charged with first-degree homicide, mutilation, and third-degree sexual assault. Schabusiness wasn't the only one who thought attacking her lawyer was a good idea, because David Chiselton was about to do the same. In Cleveland, Ohio, David Chiselton heartlessly sexually assaulted his own girlfriend's 15-year-old daughter. If only this was the worst of it, though, because Chiselton decided to go on a reign of terror that night. He first pistol-whipped his own girlfriend, and to leave no evidence behind, Chiselton lit up the entire apartment complex on fire. Chiselton was on such a rage-filled destruction quest that the SWAT themselves were sent in to apprehend him. However, bad behavior extends from the street all the way to the courtroom, and the judge had to face his rudeness. During the hearing, however, Chiselton treated his lawyer as his victim when he suddenly attacked him out of nowhere. Chiselton didn't realize that his lawyer was his best chance at a better sentencing, but he gave up that right. After chaos in the courtroom that ended with Chiselton restrained, his charges racked up even higher, enough to get him 47 years behind bars for felony assault, arson, and a whole host of other charges. It's one thing to attack a lawyer on your side, but attacking the prosecution against you? Nicholas Twinster found out what would happen. On September the 27th, 2014, Nicholas Twinster was in Berlin at the same time as his estranged wife, Melissa, and her then-boyfriend, Justin Daniels. Whether it was by chance or chase, Nicholas would find the couple, but instead of an awkward ex-partner introduction, Nicholas would shoot and kill both Melissa and Justin. Nicholas was easily arrested and charged with 2 counts of homicide, but soon enough, it seemed like he had the killer instinct from much earlier, when abuse charges against Melissa surfaced. But when the prosecution brought this up, not knowing it was apparently very sensitive to Nicholas, he went berserk.
Verlaine witnessed the defendant abuse her mother.
It seemed like Nicholas was more concerned about his daughter than his wife, and the judge would agree.
There is no remorse by the defendant. He continues to blame others.
An apology couldn't save Twinster, however, and he was found guilty of 2 counts of homicide. Twinster could say goodbye to vacation time in Berlin too, because he was handed 2 life sentences running consecutively without parole. Instead of attacking a lawyer or prosecutor, convict Bruce Embry himself was attacked. In Kalamazoo, Michigan, 53-year-old Bruce Embry was about to add one more heinous crime to his already shameful rap sheet of a felony larceny conviction and criminal sexual misconduct. This time, however, it was the heartless murder of his own step-grandson, 17-year-old Demetrian Hegler. Apparently, Hegler had told his grandmother that he'd heard Embry talking to another woman on the phone. This ended horrifically, though, with Embry shooting his own grandson, initially trying to hide the fact by telling the police he'd found Hegler dead with a gunshot wound. But then, in a rare moment of conscience, Embry decided to confess to the police that he was the one who killed his grandson. Embry even told the police, "Take me to jail." In court, Embry was ready to receive his penance. This penance was in the form of felony firearm charges and open murder, leaving it to the jury to decide whether it's first or second-degree murder. Embry was still ultimately set to a life in prison without parole. But this wasn't enough for one of Hegler's family members, who tried to lunge at Embry in court, but was stopped by officials and the police.
He never did nothing to you, Bruce. Never. He never disrespected you. He never cursed you. He never did nothing.
Embry might have deserved it, but the attack led to the entire court blowing up into absolute chaos. It's bad enough when a convict antagonizes an attorney or judge, but when the convict's whole family does it, you get Robert Howes. In Cleveland, Ohio, Robert Howes showed up one night to the house of former NFL star Joe Jurvicius, except Howes wasn't there to ask for an autograph. He was there to rob Jurvicius and his entire family right after dinner. Howes was armed, held Jurvicius at gunpoint, and demanded money and electronics. He even threatened to shoot Jurvicius in front of his entire family. Strangely enough, he refused to take Jurvicius' Super Bowl ring, with the excuse that he'd get caught if he sold it. Clearly he'd done this before, and his reign of terror lasted a whole 30 minutes before Jurvicius and his family escaped. When police showed up to arrest Howes, it seemed like he was already on a crime spree. A few days prior, Howes had tried to rob a 70-year-old lady before she locked herself in a room, and shockingly, he was already on parole for home invasion and was wearing an ankle monitor, which didn't stop him from committing the same crime he was already being punished for. Talk about criminal IQ. In court, Howes pleaded guilty to all his charges of aggravated burglary, aggravated robbery, and others. He must have thought his charges wouldn't land him in prison that long, because when the judge handed him his sentence of 43 years, Howes erupted in objection.
7, the kidnapping, I sentenced you to 11 years, plus 3 years for the gun. Count 8, the having a weapon while under disability, I sentenced you to 36 months. 43 straight, right?
What followed was truly absolute chaos, largely due to Howes' own family losing it in court, yelling and throwing insults at the judge.
Get out of here, man. Out of here, man.
Howes was promptly removed from the courtroom, but you can still hear everyone going crazy outside. While convicts losing it in court usually do it out of a violent intent, Ignacio Rodriguez's outburst might have had a larger meaning. In Bexar County, Texas, police and paramedics arrived at the house of Ignacio Rodriguez, where they found a 4-month-old unresponsive baby. Shortly after, horrifying results were found when the baby seemed to have a fractured skull, brain bleeding, and retinal hemorrhaging. The baby also suffocated from being placed face down. Once the child died in the hospital, Rodriguez was arrested as the prime suspect. Rodriguez pleaded guilty without hassle and was handed a 50-year sentence. While this might seem like a by-the-books, open-and-shut case, the victim's mother's statement took the case in a weird direction. The mother talked about her other child, who would have to grow up asking questions. Strangely, the mother was reading from a paper without a tear on her face.
I hate more than anything what you did to her son, and for that I can't ever see myself forgiving you. You were supposed to be our protector, not the one to break our hearts.
All of a sudden, Ignacio Rodriguez goes on a genuine rant, asking the mother to tell the truth. Rodriguez was shaking, and it didn't seem like a normal outburst of a killer.
As she gets older, she'll start asking questions.
Then tell her the truth. Tell her the truth. Tell her the truth. Tell how everything was supposed to be. Tell her the whole truth. Don't lie to her. Tell her the whole truth. Tell her the whole truth.
Observers of the case theorize there's more to it than Rodriguez killing the child, with the theories putting the mother as a suspect as well. Sometimes the sentencing can be just a spark that turns the whole court upside down, like what happened with Dexter Johnson. In Harris County, Texas, a couple's drive became a bloodbath when Maria Aparence and Hoy Ngo were driving around before they got ambushed by Dexter Johnson and 4 others. But what was initially started as a joyride turned much, much darker when Johnson decided to sexually assault Maria Aparence. It only got worse from there when the group shot and killed Ngo and Aparence for seemingly no reason. In court, everything was going as routinely as possible for a guaranteed murderer, especially with Johnson being tried separately from his accomplices. One might say Johnson looked somewhat emotional, but the emotions of a convict are usually toward his sentence, not his crime. Soon enough, Johnson was given a reason to get emotional: the death penalty.
In accordance with the laws of the state of Texas, this court hereby sentences your punishment of death.
The decision led to an uproar in court, though, when someone in the back started yelling.
Jesus, for God! For God!
See you, ladies and gentlemen.
Sending Dexter himself into a frenzy, trying to attack someone before he was restrained.
Gentlemen.